Can low-dose psychedelic sessions heal trauma? Spoiler alert, yes. Let's get into it. Hi everybody, my name is Jill. Welcome back to the Journey Sage, and this is the channel that I wish had been around when I was going through my psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, because on this channel I talk about psychedelic medicines and how they can help mental health issues, very specifically around trauma. And so very recently I had the opportunity to attend a low-dose 5-MeO session, and I jumped at it because there are over 10 clinical trials out there, some of them recruiting, some of them completed, some of them in the process, all about 5-MeO and potentially healing PTSD through trauma healing. So when this opportunity kind of came across my path, I was like, I have to try this. I've always got some trauma to heal from my childhood, so let's go ahead and get into it. By the way, if you hear some squawking, that's my parakeets just having way too much fun upstairs. All right, now, for those of you who aren't familiar with 5-MeO DMT, it is basically the synthetic version of something that's called bufo. Bufo is a substance that comes from particularly toads. It's like their defense mechanism. And the 5-MeO is the synthetic version. Here, I'm going to put up here what the big giant words are for what 5-MeO stand for, because there's no way I'm ever going to be able to pronounce it. Now, my experience up to this point has been bufo and 5-MeO in macro doses, meaning a dose that kind of completely takes me out of my ego. I'm not really aware that I'm Jill. I'm like I'm strapped to a roller coaster. I'm going 1,000 miles an hour. It can't be controlled, and you just go with it. And for me, particularly, it's usually a tremendous trauma release, along with some spirituality kind of added in. What's most important, I think, for this discussion is the length. So my macro doses are still somewhere around 15 to 30 minutes of active enhanced state. That's not including kind of waking up and coming to myself. Low doses of these substances, or very specifically 5-MeO, because that's what I experienced, same duration, 15-ish, 30 minutes coming back to yourself. So the duration didn't change. The intensity did. And here's what I found super, super fascinating. I went in with an intention when I was 19. I was on my own, and they were not good years. My college years were not good years. There was a lot of trauma from my childhood that I hadn't worked through. My father was a bit stalkerish. I was in poverty. I didn't exactly know. Sometimes there were weeks where I wasn't exactly sure what was going to happen in the following week. So anyway, with all of that said, that inner 19-year-old is still kind of there, being very protective, kind of living in fear of the world, whereas 54-year-old Jill is kind of like, no, we're good. We know how to work a career. We're solid. We're set. But I had noticed that when I was feeling uncomfortable in my body at 54, when I really dove down into the physical sensations where I felt discomfort, suddenly these images of the 19-year-old kind of popped up, and I realized, oh, I'm kind of seeing the world through her perspective sometimes, and she needs to be updated. Psychedelics are a beautiful way to update our inner children, to let them know that they are safe and that we don't have to kind of live our lives by the experiences we had when we were children. Now, if that lost you a little bit, go read about internal family systems, go read about parts work, go read about inner children. For me, paying attention to my inner children has been an incredible, incredible therapeutic technique. So I refer to a lot of my parts as the ages that the trauma happened. So I was very focused going into this session in trying to help that 19-year-old understand that we are in a very safe, secure place right now. We are no longer in an economic state, a bad economic state, being stalked by somebody who was supposed to care for us, and not really knowing what the future was going to hold. So the facilitators did a wonderful job The first hour of the retreat was all about the group of women getting to know each other, full disclosure about the dosages available, full disclosure as to what to expect, and a lot of permission for the women in the group to simply be who they were and allow the experience to unfold. It was beautifully facilitated by two women. Now, here's what I found. The very first dose, the lowest dose, and every person there was able to decide their dosage as we moved through the day. And I was very, very curious about the actual leveling up. So I just kind of followed that protocol of just moving up a level each time. And there were 4 levels. So the very first level was fascinating in that I still was Jill and I could experience the enhanced state. So with DMT, usually I don't even know that I'm Jill. I'm having some sort of spiritual experience. I'm out there in the universe, or I'm deep in my body. This was where I could actually purposely think about what it was like when I was 19. And I could almost kind of feel my brain kind of going back to that age and just kind of coding those memories a little bit, or highlighting those memories so that we knew we were going to do some work. The second level was a bit more. At that point, I was using some pretty intense visualization strategies that I use all the time. I was literally putting adult 54-year-old Jill back in that crappy apartment, sitting with 19-year-old Jill and trying to get her out of that little dingy, very bad neighborhood apartment so that she could go out and live. And she wouldn't go. She would not go. I mean, if you're watching this channel, you know that the use of imagination and visualization is a tremendous partner in healing trauma. And so I came out of that second dose a little bit higher than the first, and I'm sorry, I do not remember the actual dosages. And I said to the facilitator, I can't get her out of the house yet. She's not ready to move out of the house or out of the apartment. And the facilitator was lovely. And she said, well, why don't you bring the apartment here so that at least the apartment is safe. And so the place that she's going to step out into is actually this very safe room. And I was like, I love that idea. Again, imagery and imagination are very powerful tools. With my third dose, that's what happened. I brought the apartment into that little space. I took her hand. We walked out of the apartment into the sunshine. And then I had all of this beautiful imagery of like a race car and a racing horse and a roller coaster. It was basically the idea that this 19-year-old had felt so constrained, and all she wanted to do was just go be free and go live and just enjoy. And so it was a beautiful series of images that told me how she internally felt at that time, that she was kind of freed from that apartment. I would say in that experience, it was 90% a DMT in the experience in an enhanced state, and only 10% Jill. And that's okay. Because we had worked up and I had been actively working on that intention, my nervous system was ready for that. And then, of course, we got to experience a macro dose if you wanted to have a macro dose. And my macro doses of 5 anymore are very musical. They are very deep in some spiritual way. I very rarely remember them anymore. And I think that's because I don't have any super, super deep trauma to heal the way I did when I first got into working with psychedelics, obviously with MDMA. So I came away from that experience, and especially after listening to the other women who were not as experienced with psychedelics as I was, and they were talking about how they were able to get comfortable with the experience. They didn't use this vocabulary, but I could hear it in their stories, how they were able to navigate the experience the same way that I navigated the experience. And every single one of them had a feeling of getting something done. There was no one disappointed. There was no one walking away upset that something hadn't been addressed. That is, I think, a a result of the beautiful medicine, the dosing, and the facilitation. When all of those things come together, beautiful work can be done. And I came away from this experience saying, for people who are new to psychedelics and want to understand what an enhanced state could do for them, low dose 5 might be a really good solution, because the very low dose, again, it only lasts 15, 20-ish minutes. You still know who you are. And if you hate it, it's all of 15, 20 minutes. It's not like a regular therapeutic journey that can go on for hours. And it's certainly nothing like a high dose journey where you're just holding on for dear life, per se, as the roller coaster kind of zooms through your brain. I really was impressed. It takes a lot to impress me when it comes to psychedelic work, because I think sometimes results are overblown. This experience, I think is very, very telling. I think more people who work in the psychedelic field should try this low dose strategy, especially if you're working on a specific trauma point. An hour after the last session, everyone was able to drive. It goes out of your body very, very quickly. So ultimately, I was super impressed. Low dose administration of 5-MeO can absolutely be a vehicle to heal trauma with good facilitation, with a good trusting setting. I think it can really be a really big game changer. So there you go. I just wanted to get this out there to explain it before it all kind of left my mind. If you are interested in, my story in the very beginning of healing PTSD with MDMA, my book, memoir, Rescuing Jill, is up on Amazon. If you're going to any sort of psychedelic retreat or psychedelic therapy and you need help figuring out what your intentions are, I also have a workbook. And of course, you can always go to thejourneysage.com. I have a ton of resources out there. And I am actually planning and organizing 2 psychedelic retreats. So if you're interested, go check them out. And with that said, until next time, take care.